The sound of drums filled the air like thunder rolling through heaven itself. The choir swayed from side to side, their white robes flashing under the bright color lights. Fire of Heaven Ministry was alive that morning. People danced, shouted, clapped, and cried all at once. Sweat mixed with tears as worshipers waved handkerchiefs in the air, shouting, "Power! Power!" At the front of the church, a woman in a wheelchair trembled as ushers rolled her forward. She was frail, wrapped in a faded Ankara scarf, her eyes shut tight as if holding back years of pain. Everyone knew her, Mama Eniola, the woman who hadn't walked in 10 years. The entire congregation leaned forward, hungry for a miracle. Pastor Elisha stood tall at the altar, his white suit shining under the stage light. His voice boomed across the microphone, smooth and commanding. "Children of God, today is your day of deliverance. Can somebody shout fire 7 times? Fire, 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 fire." The church shook with energy. Monique Carter, sitting at the second row, felt chills run down her spine. She had come for this, for a miracle, for a new beginning, for hope. Her eyes glistened with tears as she whispered, "Lord, please, if this man is truly your servant, let your power touch me too." Pastor Elisha stretched his hands toward the woman in the wheelchair. "You, spirit of paralysis, I command you in the name above all names, rise and walk." For a few seconds, silence filled the hall. The only sound was the steady hum of the air conditioner and the soft trembling of the woman's lips. Then suddenly she screamed. The ushers jumped back. Her legs twitched. Slowly, like a new baby learning to stand, she pushed herself up. "Jesus, Jesus," someone cried. The choir erupted into a new song. Miracle Worker, Way Maker. People threw their scarves into the air. Others fell to the ground crying. The woman staggered forward, her face shining with tears. She took 2 steps, then 3. The crowd exploded. "Power! Power!" Monique screamed and fell on her knees, her heart pounding. She had never seen anything like it in her life. "God, you are real!" she shouted, tears rolling freely. Her friend beside her, Gloria, laughed and hugged her. "Didn't I tell you this church is not ordinary? My sister, this is where power is." Monique nodded, her chest rising and falling fast. "I've been at churches all my life, Gloria, but I've never felt anything like this. I can feel something moving inside me." Gloria grinned. "That's the anointing. You'll see, your life will never be the same again." As the service ended, Pastor Elisha's voice echoed through the microphone. "Next Sunday, we will have a night of prophetic encounter. Come fasting, come praying, come expecting your own miracle. God is here." The congregation roared in agreement. Monique watched as people dropped money at the altar, some with joy, some with trembling. A woman dropped a bundle of Naira notes and knelt crying, "Lord, remember me." Monique wanted to give too, but all she had was transport fare. She pressed her purse tightly and whispered, "Next time, Lord. Next time, I'll give you something worthy." When she stepped out of the church gate, the sun hit her face. The street was filled with cars honking and sellers shouting. She turned to see Mama Eniola, the woman who walked, sitting by the wall again, surrounded by ushers. Her head was bowed, her body shaking. Monique frowned. "Is she okay?" An usher quickly stepped in front of her. "Sister, go home and thank God. The devil is angry. Don't let him use you to doubt your miracle." Monique nodded slowly. "All right, God bless you." But as she walked away, she couldn't shake the image. The same woman who walked moments ago was now being lifted into a van quietly. Still, she brushed it off. Faith, she told herself, doesn't doubt. That night, Monique couldn't sleep. Her husband, Deli, snored softly beside her. The sound of rain tapped against her old tin roof. She kept replaying the miracle in her head. The shout, the music, the energy, the fire. It was as if heaven had opened before her eyes. Deli stirred and mumbled, "Monique, why are you still awake?" "I'm just thinking," she said softly. "About what?" "The church I went to today. Gloria took me there. The pastor, he's powerful, Deli. He prayed for a woman who couldn't walk, and she stood up right there in front of everyone." Deli turned and looked at her through sleepy eyes. Another miracle story. This one was real. I saw it with my eyes. I felt the spirit in that place. He sighed. "Monique, please don't get carried away. You've been to so many churches. Every new pastor you meet becomes your real man of God. You remember what happened last year with Pastor Samuel?" Monique frowned. "This one is different. Pastor Alicia is not like those ones." Deli sat up. "They're all the same, Monique. Collecting money, shouting fire, making people fall down. When last did you read your own Bible?" She looked away, hurt by his tone. "You wouldn't understand. You don't even believe in miracles anymore." "Maybe because I'm tired of seeing you get hurt," he said quietly. "I just want my wife to find peace, not another prophet." Monique stayed silent. In her heart, she felt torn. Could he be right? Or was he standing in the way of her deliverance? When Deli drifted back to sleep, she whispered to herself, "Lord, if this church is your will, show me. I'll give you everything I have if you can change my life." Days passed. The more she went afire of heaven ministry, the more she felt connected. She volunteered as a cleaner, then later joined the ushering team. Pastor Alicia would smile at her and say, "You have a pure heart, Sister Monique. God will lift you soon." Each word from his mouth felt like honey to her soul. She believed every prophecy. She gave more than she could afford. Then one Friday night, the church organized a miracle vigil. The hall was packed. The generator hummed as fans spun slowly. At midnight, Pastor Alicia appeared, holding a long white staff. He began to call names from the crowd. "You there, the woman in blue? Your husband is cheating on you. The Lord just showed me." The woman screamed and fell to the ground. Monique watched in awe. How could he know such things? Then suddenly, he turned to her. "You, Sister Monique." Stepped forward. Her heart raced as she walked trembling to the front. The pastor's eyes narrowed as he stared at her. "You are surrounded by darkness," he said slowly. "There is a woman in your husband's family. She has vowed that you will never have peace." Monique gasped, "Jesus." "She buried your destiny in the river. But don't fear. The Lord says your deliverance will come through obedience. You must separate yourself for 7 days. No intimacy with your husband, no eating his food, and no speaking to your in-laws. If you obey, you will be free." The crowd clapped. "Yes, man of God." Monique fell to her knees. "I will obey, sir. Please pray for me." He placed his hand on her head. "The Lord has started something great in you." When she got home, Deli was waiting half asleep on the couch. "You went to that church again?" "Yes," she whispered. He yawned. "Monique, we talked about this. You can't keep chasing miracles every week. It's not a chase. It's deliverance. The pastor said there's someone in your family fighting me." Deli's brows knitted. "What nonsense is that? My family? Which of them?" She shook her head. "He said I shouldn't mention names. He said I should avoid them for 7 days." Deli laughed bitterly. "So now you'll stop eating my food too, ABI? Because one pastor said so?" Monique looked away. "He's a man of God. You won't understand." He stood up, angry. "No, Monique, you won't understand. This is how marriages scatter. You listen to every voice that shouts fire. If you keep this up, you'll lose everything." His voice broke. He walked into the bedroom and slammed the door. Monique stood there, tears rolling down her cheeks. She felt both scared and determined. "Lord," she whispered, "I'll obey you, even if nobody believes." The following Sunday, the church was louder than ever. Cameras flashed, ushers danced, and testimonies poured in. "Last week, Pastor prophesied that I would get promotion, and I got it. My enemy fell sick. My shop caught fire, but my goods didn't burn." Monique clapped along, though her heart felt heavy. Something deep inside her whispered questions she didn't want to ask. During the offering session, she saw Pastor Elisha's eyes scanning the crowd. When his gaze landed on her, he smiled faintly. She smiled back, her chest tightening with pride and fear at the same time. Later that evening, as the service closed, Monique waited by the corner to greet him. He passed by with his bodyguards, smelling of expensive cologne. "Sister Monique," he said softly, "your obedience will bring victory. Keep standing." "Yes, sir," she whispered. As he walked away, she felt blessed, yet something in her heart felt unsettled. On her way out, she saw Gloria speaking to a strange woman at the gate. The woman's voice was low but urgent. "Be careful of that church," she said. "Some things are not as they appear." Gloria rolled her eyes. "Enemy of progress. Go away, I beg." The woman shook her head and whispered to Monique, "Don't let their fire burn your life." Then she disappeared into the crowd. Monique stood frozen, her breath short. "Who was that?" she asked. "Probably a mad woman," Gloria said. "Don't mind her." But as Monique entered the bus that night, the woman's voice echoed in her head again. "Don't let their fire burn your life." She didn't know it yet, but that single warning would soon save her from something far darker than she ever imagined. Before we continue, make sure you like this video, subscribe to Tales by Wealth, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss what happens next. Because what Monique discovers in Chapter 2 will change everything she ever believed about church and miracles. The morning sun burned hot over Lagos as Monique Carter hurried down the street, clutching her small Bible and handkerchief. The air smelled of dust, roasted corn, and exhaust fumes. Vendors shouted, buses honked, and loudspeakers from nearby churches filled the air with cries of fire. "Receive your blessing." She felt caught between two worlds, the ordinary and the spiritual. At home, Marcus was sitting by the dining table reading the newspaper when she entered. His tie was loose, his breakfast untouched. "You're back from church again?" he asked, his tone calm but tired. Monique nodded. "Pastor Elisha called another prayer meeting. He said my breakthrough is close. He even told me something very deep, Marcus. He said someone near you is trying to destroy our marriage." Marcus looked up slowly. "Near me? What does that even mean?" He said it clearly. "Someone from your side." He saw in the spirit. He said the person carries water in a calabash and uses it to cage my womb. Marcus dropped the newspaper. "Monique, please. You've been talking about enemies since we married. When will it stop?" Her eyes filled with tears. "You think I'm lying? You think I enjoy fasting every day? I'm just fighting for our future. I've lost 2 pregnancies. Maybe this is the answer." Marcus stood up and walked to her. "I know we've suffered, but baby, we can't solve everything with prophecy. Sometimes people use your pain to control you." His gentle words stung her pride. "So you're calling my pastor a liar?" "I'm saying be careful." She turned away. "He told me you would doubt. He said the enemy would speak through you to distract me." Marcus sighed deeply. "I can't win this argument." He picked up his car keys. "I'll be late for work. Don't skip breakfast." When the door closed behind him, Monique sat down and cried quietly. She wanted to believe her husband, but Pastor Elisha's words echoed louder. Obedience brings deliverance. That week, she obeyed the prophecy completely. She cooked for Marcus, but never ate with him. When he tried to kiss her, she turned her face away. "I'm in consecration," she whispered. He frowned. "Consecration from your own husband?" "It's only for 7 days," she said softly. "The man of God instructed me." "Monique, you're my wife, not his follower." But she didn't answer. She knelt by the bed and prayed until her knees hurt. On the 5th night, Marcus exploded. "Enough, Monique. This nonsense ends tonight." She looked up at him, frightened. "You're shouting. Don't let the devil use you." He stared at her, his eyes full of disbelief. "The devil? I'm your husband. You're losing yourself." Tears rolled down her cheeks. "You wouldn't understand. You're not spiritual enough." He shook his head and walked out of the room. The slamming door echoed like thunder in her chest. Sunday arrived again. The church was packed beyond capacity. Pastor Alicia walked in wearing a crimson suit, followed by 4 bodyguards in black. The air smelled of anointing oil and perfume. "Children of power," he shouted. "Fire," the congregation roared. Monique was near the front, trembling in anticipation. When worship ended, he began calling names again. "There is a woman here. Your husband mocked your faith, but I see a new crown on your head." Monique burst into tears. "That's me," he continued. "The Lord will give you a new home, a new joy, a new season. The old shall pass away." People shouted and danced. Monique felt heat spread through her body. After service, the pastor's assistant handed her a note. "Pastor Alicia wants to see you privately on Wednesday." Her heart jumped. "Me?" "Yes, sister. Come fasting." When Wednesday came, Monique wore her best dress and tied her hair neatly. She walked through the massive church compound, past the fountains and posters at Reed, where power speaks louder than words. The office smelled of air freshener and new carpet. Pastor Alicia sat behind a large glass desk, smiling. "Ah, Sister Monique, the woman with a destiny." She bowed slightly. "Good afternoon, sir." He motioned for her to sit. "The Lord showed me something about you. You're not just an ordinary woman. You have a great light. But your husband's unbelief is blocking it. For your destiny to shine, you must stand alone until he repents." Monique's eyes widened. "Stand alone?" "Yes. Separate yourself for a season. When the Lord finishes his work, he'll bring him back. But for now, your focus must be me, the ministry." He smiled, quickly correcting himself. She nodded slowly, confused but trusting. "I'll do whatever God wants." He leaned forward. "Good. The Lord rewards obedience. Now, stretch your hands." She did. He poured oil into her palms, murmuring strange words. "By this oil, your enemies will sleep and not wake." When she opened her eyes, he was staring deeply at her, smiling faintly. "Go in peace. And remember, never share our conversations with anyone." "Yes, sir," she whispered. Days turned into weeks. Marcus noticed a change immediately. She was quieter, more distant. She spent long hours in church, returning home late at night. One evening, he confronted her. "Monique, what's happening to us? You hardly talk to me anymore." "I'm busy with ministry work," she said, folding laundry. He took the clothes from her hands. "You're busy avoiding your marriage." Her lips trembled. "Pastor Alicia said you won't understand. He said you're under spiritual attack." Marcus laughed bitterly. "I'm under attack now? Maybe from your pastor's lies." "Don't insult him," she snapped. "Why not? He's destroying my home." Monique clapped her hands together. "Jesus, see how the devil is speaking through you." Marcus froze. "So that's it. I'm the devil now." He grabbed his jacket. "You know what? You can have your church. I'm done fighting for a woman who's already been brainwashed." He walked out, slamming the door so hard that dust fell from the ceiling. Monique collapsed on the floor, sobbing. "Lord, why is he doing this? Why can't he see you're using me?" Her phone buzzed. It was a message from Pastor Alicia. "Don't cry. The storm always comes before the testimony. Stay focused." She smiled through her tears. "Yes, man of God. I'll stay focused." 2 weeks later, church members whispered about Monique's new favor. Pastor Alicia began calling her Daughter of Light in public. He asked her to sit in the front row, to help lead prayers, to coordinate women's meetings. Gloria teased her after one service. "Sister Monique, you're moving up fast, oh. Soon you'll be the first lady of the church." Monique laughed shyly. "Please don't say that. Pastor is like a father to me." Gloria winked. "A fine father, Shah." They both giggled, but deep down Monique felt uneasy. Pastor Elisha's compliments had become more personal, about her beauty, her smile, her special glow. She brushed it aside, convincing herself it was just fatherly affection. Then came the night of covenant prayer. The pastor announced that all workers must sleep inside the church for 3 nights. "The Lord will visit us at midnight. Only those who stay will carry the new fire." Monique packed her things eagerly. Marcus didn't even ask where she was going. He just muttered, "May God help you," and turned away. Inside the church that night, candles flickered everywhere. Drums echoed softly. People prayed, cried, and rolled on the floor. Around 1 a.m., Pastor Alicia came out in a white robe, holding incense. The air grew heavy with smoke. He began to lay hands on people one by one. When he reached Monique, he paused. "You, daughter of light, step forward." She stepped forward, trembling. "The Lord says he will anoint you as his vessel," he declared. "You must not resist what he is about to do." He poured oil on her head until it dripped down her face. "Receive it," he shouted. Monique fell to the floor, shaking uncontrollably. People shouted fire and power around her. When she opened her eyes, everyone was gone. The hall was dark except for a few candles. Pastor Alicia stood nearby, smiling. "The Spirit rested long on you tonight." She sat up slowly, confused. "Where is everyone?" "They've gone to rest. You were deep in the Spirit." He extended his hand to help her up. His touch lingered longer than necessary. She stepped back, uneasy. "Sir, I should go and sleep." He smiled. "Yes, the Lord is proud of you." She turned quickly and left, her heart pounding. The next day, gossip spread like wildfire. Some women claimed Pastor Alicia favored Monique too much. Others said she was being groomed for leadership. Gloria confronted her gently. "Monique, be careful. I love you like a sister, but I've seen things here that don't feel right." Monique frowned. "You're listening to gossip." "No, I'm telling you the truth. Last week, one of the so-called healed women told me she was paid to act lame. I didn't believe it until I saw her walking perfectly fine outside." Monique gasped. "That's impossible." "I'm serious," Gloria said. "Something strange is going on." Before Monique could reply, Pastor Elisha's assistant approached. "Sister Monique, Pastor wants to see you." Gloria grabbed her hand. "Please don't go alone." Monique shook her off. "You're letting fear talk." She followed the assistant to the office. Inside, Pastor Alicia looked serious. "There are people speaking against this ministry," he said. "The devil hates what we're doing. Even some of your friends have become tools of darkness." Monique's heart sank. "Do you mean Gloria?" He sighed. "Don't mention names. Just keep your distance. The Lord will expose them." She nodded. "Yes, sir." He smiled again. "You're a loyal daughter. God will reward you." That night, Marcus returned home unexpectedly early. He looked exhausted. "Monique, can we talk?" She hesitated. "About what?" "About us." She crossed her arms. "There is no us until you accept the calling on my life." "Calling," he repeated, laughing bitterly. "You think neglecting your husband and obeying that man's every word is a calling? You're jealous because God is using me." He stared at her, broken. "No, I'm heartbroken because I lost my wife to a church that doesn't love her." Silence hung between them. Then he whispered, "If you walk out that door again, don't come back." Monique looked at the Bible in her hand, then at the framed wedding photo on the wall. Her heart twisted painfully. "I have to obey God," she said, and walked away. By the time she reached the church, her tears had dried. She entered the prayer hall and knelt down. "Lord, I've given up everything for you. Please don't let me be ashamed." The door opened behind her. Pastor Alicia walked in, clapping slowly. "You're a true soldier of Christ," he said softly. Monique rose to her feet, startled. "Pastor? I was just praying." "I know. The Spirit told me to check on you." He walked closer. "Many people will never understand your sacrifice, but heaven does." She forced a smile. "Thank you, sir. Now go and rest. You'll need strength for what's coming." "What's coming?" He smiled mysteriously. "The next level of your destiny." When she left, he stood alone in the dim light, dialing a number on his phone. "She's ready," he said quietly. "Yes, the obedient ones always are." Outside, the night was still. Monique looked up at the sky. The stars twinkled faintly, but her heart felt heavy. For the first time since she joined Fire of Heaven Ministry, She felt a strange emptiness, like her faith had been hijacked by something unseen. Yet she whispered to herself, "Obedience brings deliverance," and kept walking. The next few weeks at Fire of Heaven Ministry were unlike anything Monique Carter had ever experienced. The church seemed to grow bigger overnight. New members, new posters, new miracles. Every service was louder, brighter, and more crowded than the last. Pastor Elisha's face appeared on billboards across Lagos with bold letters. The prophet of this generation. Monique walked to the gate one Thursday morning, wearing her worker's uniform, a neat white shirt and long blue skirt. She had become one of the church's most trusted volunteers. People greeted her respectfully now. "Good morning, Sister Monique." "Ah, our daughter of light." But not everyone smiled sincerely. She could feel certain eyes following her, whispering behind her back. During choir practice, she overheard two women murmuring near the pulpit. "That woman is always near the pastor," one said. "Maybe that's why she's rising fast." "You think it's only prayer that gives promotion in this place?" the other replied, laughing quietly. Monique pretended not to hear. Still, the words pierced her heart. When she got home that night, she couldn't stop thinking about them. Was that how people saw her now, as someone using the pastor's favor for power? She tried to pray it off. But even her prayers started feeling strange. Whenever she closed her eyes, she saw flashes. Pastor Elisha's face, the way he smiled, the oil dripping from his hands, the sound of his voice calling her daughter of light. One evening after service, she waited outside with Gloria. The streetlights flickered, casting long shadows. "Gloria," she said quietly, "why are people talking about me?" Gloria looked at her sadly. "Because they see what I see. You're getting too close to that man, and I'm scared for you." Monique frowned. "Scared? Of what?" "Monique, open your eyes. Don't you notice how every miracle looks the same? The people he heals, the way they fall, the testimonies that sound like rehearsed drama?" Monique's heart pounded. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying something doesn't feel right. Last Sunday, a woman said she was healed from blindness, but I saw her counting money backstage after service." "Counting?" Monique gasped. "No, Gloria, don't say that. Maybe she was just giving offering." "Offering doesn't come in wads of 500 naira notes from the pastor's drawer," Gloria said sharply. "I'm telling you, something dark is hiding under all this shouting." Before Monique could answer, Pastor Elisha's car pulled up, the tinted window rolled down, and his voice called out smoothly, "Sister Monique, come." Gloria stepped back. "Be careful." Monique hesitated, but walked to the car. "Yes, sir." He smiled, the gold ring on his finger gleaming. "The Lord is pleased with your faithfulness. Tomorrow, meet me by 7 p.m. We'll discuss your next assignment. Great doors are opening for you." "Yes, Pastor," she said, trying to sound strong. As the car drove away, Gloria whispered under her breath, "May God open your eyes before it's too late." Friday evening came faster than she expected. Monique arrived early, heart fluttering. The church compound was empty, except for 2 security men and a few parked cars. Pastor Elisha's office glowed softly through tinted glass. She knocked once. "Come in." He sat at his desk, reading a thick brown file. When he looked up, his expression softened. "You came on time." "Good." "Sir, you said there's an assignment?" "Yes." He closed the file slowly. "But first, tell me how you've been." Monique smiled weakly. "I'm fine, sir. Just praying more." "Good. Prayer is power." He stood up and walked around the desk. His cologne filled the air. "You see, Monique, not everyone can handle spiritual responsibility. That's why many envy you. But I can trust you." She nodded shyly. "Thank you, sir." He handed her an envelope. "Inside are details of a special visitation. You'll lead a prayer team to our new branch in Ibadan. You'll go with Sister Tommy and Sister Ngozi. They're loyal women. You'll learn from them." Her eyes widened. "Me? Led? Yes. You've been chosen. God is lifting you." She took the envelope, trembling with excitement. "Thank you, sir. I won't fail." He smiled. "I know you won't. Now go and rest. The journey begins tomorrow. The next day, they boarded a church bus bound for Ibadan. The highway stretched endlessly, lined with dusty trees and billboard slogans about repentance. Ngozi, a quiet woman in her 30s, sat beside Monique while Tommy hummed softly in front. When the driver stopped at a fuel station, Ngozi leaned closer. "Monique, can I tell you something?" "Sure," Monique said. "Don't trust everything you see in this ministry." Monique blinked. "What do you mean?" "I used to work in Pastor Elisha's media team. I saw things I can't unsee. The so-called healing videos. Some were edited before posting. And those who claimed to see visions, they were coached." Monique's throat tightened. "Coach," Ngozi nodded. "Before every major program, Pastor holds briefings. He tells the actors what to say, what to cry about, even when to fall. He pays them through an account under another name." Monique shook her head violently. "No, that can't be true. You're just bitter." Ngozi sighed. "I wish I was lying. You'll understand soon." Tommy turned from the front seat, her face serious. "Keep your voice down. The driver might hear." Monique stared out the window, her heart pounding. Could this be jealousy? Or was Ngozi telling the truth? She didn't know what to believe anymore. When they arrived in Ibadan, the branch church was smaller but decorated exactly like the Lagos headquarters. Same red carpet, same banner, same picture of Pastor Elisha smiling with his hands raised toward heaven. They began their prayer meeting. Monique preached passionately, repeating everything she'd learned. The congregation cheered, shouting power at every line. Afterward, as they packed up, Tommy whispered, "We have to talk tonight." That night, in their hotel room, Tommy locked the door and turned off the TV. "Monique, listen to me. Ngozi is right. The pastor is not who you think he is." Monique frowned. "Please stop. You're both scaring me." Tommy's voice trembled. "I joined this ministry 5 years ago after my mother's death. I believe God sent Pastor Elisha to heal my pain. But after a while, he asked me to do things that broke me. Lie about miracles, collect people's details, threaten anyone who questioned him." Monique stared at her in horror. "Why didn't you leave?" "I tried," Tommy said, tears spilling down her cheeks. "But he said if I leave, I'll die. He told me he buried something that connects to my spirit." Monique shook her head slowly. "I don't believe this. Pastor Elisha prays in tongues for hours. He can't be evil." Tommy grabbed her hand. "Please, don't let his tongue confuse you. He hides darkness behind holy words." The room went silent. Outside, thunder rumbled in the distance. Ngozi spoke softly. "Tomorrow morning, we'll show you proof. Don't tell anyone." Sleep refused to come. Monique lay awake, listening to the rain on the window. Her mind raced through everything she'd seen. The miracles, the prophecies, the dreams. Could it all be fake? At dawn, she heard Tommy whisper, "Now." They slipped out of the hotel and headed to the church compound. The caretaker was still asleep. Ngozi used a spare key she'd kept. The main hall was dark and cold. They tiptoed toward the storage room behind the altar. Inside were costumes, crutches, bandages, wigs, bottles labeled anointing oil. Ngozi opened a small drawer and pulled out a folder. "Look." Monique flipped through the papers. Each page had photos and signatures, names of people listed under testimonies. Beside them were payment amounts. 15,000 Nigerian nairas. Delivered from cancer. 20,000 Nigerian nairas. Walked after 5 years. 10,000 Nigerian nairas. Raised from death media version. Her hands shook. "This can't be real." Tommy whispered, "It is. We've been helping him lie to thousands of people." Just then, the sound of footsteps echoed outside. Ngozi froze. "Hide!" They ducked behind a stack of plastic chairs. The door opened slowly. Pastor Elisha stepped in, his white robe brushing the floor. He looked around, his face calm but his eyes cold. "So," he said softly, "my loyal daughters decided to visit early?" Monique's heart stopped. He had caught them. Tommy stood trembling. "Sir, we were just cleaning." "Cleaning?" He smiled faintly. "Or investigating?" No one spoke. The silence was thick as smoke. He closed the folder, placed it back on the table, and said in a voice that chilled the room, "The problem with curiosity is that it kills faith." Ngozi took a step back. "We just want the truth." "The truth," he repeated. "The truth is what I say it is." He turned to Monique. "And you, daughter of light, I expected better. You disappoint me." Tears filled her eyes. "Pastor, I didn't know." "Enough!" he shouted. His voice echoed like thunder. "You think you can expose God's anointed?" Tommy whispered, "You're not God's anointed." For a moment, time stood still. Then Pastor Elisha's expression changed. A slow, cold smile spread across his face. "You'll regret those words." He signaled to two ushers who appeared at the door, men they hadn't noticed before. "Take them to the prayer room," he said. "We'll deal with this matter spiritually." The men stepped forward. Monique's knees weakened. She could barely breathe. The world around her blurred. Hours later, the three women sat in a small locked room at the back of the church. Candles flickered, casting shadows on the cracked walls. Tommy's cheek was bruised. Ngozi's hands were shaking. Monique whispered, "I didn't mean to betray him. I just wanted to know the truth." Ngozi replied softly, "Now you do." Through the door, they heard muffled voices, Pastor Elisha and his assistant arguing. "She knows too much," the assistant said. Elisha's voice came cold and calm. "We'll handle it the usual way. Make them sign and send them away quietly." "Sir, and the files?" "I'll burn them." The footsteps faded. Ngozi turned to Monique. "We can't stay here. When he says handle it, it never ends well." Monique looked toward the tiny window. Rain drizzled outside. She swallowed hard. "Then we run." Tommy nodded. At midnight, they huddled together in silence, praying in whispers, not the loud, fiery kind of church taught them, but broken, desperate prayers from wounded souls. Midnight came. The compound was quiet. They pushed the window open and slipped out one by one. Their feet splashed through puddles as thunder rolled above. Halfway down the street, Monique turned to look back. The church building stood dark against the night sky, its giant banner smiling falsely. She felt tears on her cheeks. "Lord," she whispered, "if this is not your house, expose it." None of them knew that somewhere above, a security camera caught everything. And that footage, still recording quietly, would soon shake the entire nation. Before we continue to the next part of this unbelievable story, take a deep breath and ask yourself, how many people have been deceived in the name of faith? If this story has opened your eyes, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss Chapter 4, where what the world sees on CCTV will change Monique's life forever. The following morning, the sun over Lagos rose slow and pale, as if heaven itself was watching carefully. Monique Carter sat by the window of her small apartment, staring at the rain-soaked streets below. Her mind was heavy with fear and confusion. She hadn't gone home the night before. She couldn't. Everything she once believed about Fire of Heaven ministry had cracked open like broken glass. Her phone buzzed. 20 missed calls from Pastor Elisha and 6 from Gloria. Her hands trembled as she pressed ignore. She couldn't talk to anyone, not yet. The events of the night still played in her head. The locked room, the folders, the fake miracle records, the lies. Ngozi and Tommy had gone their separate ways at dawn, afraid they were being followed. They agreed to stay silent until they could gather proof. But Monique couldn't stop replaying the sound of Pastor Elisha's voice. "You'll regret those words." By afternoon, she gathered courage and called Gloria. "Monique, thank God you're safe. I've been calling since morning. What happened?" Monique's voice cracked. "You were right, Gloria. Everything you said, it's all true. The miracles, the prophecies, all fake. He pays people to pretend." Gloria gasped. "What?" "I saw the record myself. Names, photos, payments." "My God," Gloria whispered. "So what now?" Monique's eyes filled with tears. "He knows we found out. He called men to take us away. I don't know what he'll do next." Gloria went silent for a few seconds. Then she said quietly, "Monique, listen. You have to tell someone." Go to the police. Monique shook her head. No one will believe me. He has powerful friends, politicians, policemen, even journalists on his side. Then we find someone who will, Gloria said. I know a reporter. My cousin works with a news station. He's been investigating fake churches. Maybe he can help. Monique hesitated. If we do this, it could destroy everything. Monique, Gloria said softly, the truth should destroy lies. That evening, they met in a small restaurant at Ojota, far from the church area. Gloria's cousin, David, was a quiet man in his late 30s, wearing glasses and carrying a small brown laptop bag. He listened carefully as Monique spoke, showing him photos she secretly took before escaping. The fake testimonies, the envelope labels, the costume wigs. David nodded slowly. I've heard rumors about Fire of Heaven Ministry, but this is proof. If we can get a video recording, something visual, the public will believe. Monique swallowed hard. A video? Yes, he said. If we can record them rehearsing those miracles or paying the actors, or even manipulating people, that will be enough to make the authorities act. Gloria frowned. But how will we get that? The church has guards everywhere. David smiled faintly. Leave that to me. Just go back like nothing happened. I'll handle the rest. Monique felt sick inside. The thought of stepping back into that building terrified her, but she knew she had to. 2 days later, she walked back to the gates of Fire of Heaven Ministry. Everything looked normal. The choir practiced, ushers smiled, and posters of Pastor Alicia still hung everywhere. As she entered, people whispered. She heard fragments of gossip. Didn't she run away? They say she's possessed. Pastor said she needs deliverance. She ignored them and went straight to the altar to pray. Moments later, Pastor Alicia appeared. His face was calm, but his eyes were sharp. My daughter returns, he said quietly. She knelt quickly. I'm sorry, sir. I was confused. The devil tried to deceive me. He studied her for a long moment, then smiled faintly. I forgive you. The Lord always restores his own. Monique's heart raced. She knew he didn't trust her, but she played along. He placed his hand on her head. Tomorrow, we'll have a special deliverance service. You'll sit in the front. You must testify that God brought you back. Yes, sir, she whispered. As she walked away, she saw Gloria standing near the entrance, pretending to sell church books. Their eyes met briefly. Gloria gave a small nod. The plan was in motion. The next day, the church overflowed. Cameras lined the aisles, capturing every moment. Pastor Elisha's media crew moved like professionals, filming miracles, testimonies, and people collapsing dramatically on stage. David had installed hidden cameras earlier that morning, small, invisible, and connected to his laptop outside in a car. The service began with fire and noise. The drums thundered. Ushers ran up and down the aisles shouting, "Power, power." Pastor Elisha's voice roared through the speakers. Today, the heavens are open. Demons will flee. Chains will break. Monique sat quietly at the front, pretending to pray, her heart pounding so loud she could barely hear the choir. One by one, the miracle patients came out. A man limping on crutches threw them down and ran across the stage. The crowd screamed. Then a woman claimed her deaf ears opened. Another said her dead child came back to life through a photograph. But behind the stage curtain, one of the hidden cameras caught something else. The same lame man, walking perfectly fine before being cued to enter. The same blind woman, counting her payment after pretending to see. David's eyes widened as he watched from his laptop. Got it, he whispered. We got everything. Meanwhile, on stage, Pastor Alicia raised his hands dramatically. This is just the beginning. The power of God is real. Then he turned toward Monique. My daughter, come forward. She froze. He smiled. Tell the world what God has done for you. The microphone was placed in her hand. The crowd stared, expecting a mighty testimony. Her lips trembled. She began, but her voice cracked. She looked at Pastor Alicia. His cold eyes warned her not to say the wrong thing. I thank God for his mercy, she said softly. He delivered me from confusion and brought me back. The crowd shouted hallelujah. But deep inside, Monique whispered, "Forgive me, Lord. I'm only pretending so the truth can come out." That evening, David uploaded the footage anonymously. Within hours, it spread like wildfire. YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. Every platform was flooded with clips titled "Fake Pastor Exposed in Lagos." The video showed everything: the backstage rehearsals, the fake wheelchair, the envelopes of money, the staff whispering lines. By midnight, the news had reached major television stations. Headlines screamed, "Fire of Heaven Ministry under investigation for fraud and deception." Police cars surrounded the church compound by morning. Members cried, confused and heartbroken. Some refused to believe. Others fell to the ground wailing. Monique watched from across the street, tears streaming down her face. "It's over," she whispered. God finally exposed it. Gloria stood beside her, shaking her head. "You did the right thing." "I lost everything," Monique said. "My marriage, my peace, my faith." "But you gained the truth," Gloria replied, "and the truth will set you free." Across the street, Pastor Alicia was being led away in handcuffs. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. He kept smiling, waving at the crowd. "You can't fight the anointed," he shouted. "Touch not my prophet." The crowd booed. Some threw stones. Monique turned away, unable to watch. 2 weeks later, Monique sat quietly at home. The noise of the city felt distant now. She had stopped attending any church. Her Bible lay open on the table, untouched. When Marcus knocked on the door, she froze. She hadn't seen him in months. He stepped in slowly, carrying a small bag. "Monique," he said softly. She turned, her eyes red. "Marcus, I saw everything on the news. I couldn't believe it at first. Then I saw your picture in the crowd. I realized what you were fighting." Tears welled up again. "I'm sorry for everything. I thought I was following God. I was blind." He walked closer, gently holding her hand. "You were looking for hope. That's not a sin." She leaned against him, sobbing, "I ruined our home." "No," he said, pulling her close. "You've learned. We can start again." For a moment, they stood in silence. Then Marcus whispered, "Next Sunday, we'll find a small church, one that teaches love, not fear." Monique nodded. "Yes. No more shouting fire. No more prophets who play with people's pain." They both smiled weakly. Days later, a television documentary aired titled "The Fall of Fire of Heaven Ministry." It told Monique's story without naming her, showing how blind faith and manipulation had destroyed countless lives. In the final scene, Monique's voice narrated softly over footage of empty pews. Faith should heal, not harm. It should bring truth, not terror. "I learned that no man of God should ever replace the voice of God in your heart." The screen faded to black. Somewhere across Africa, thousands of viewers watched, silent, shaken, whispering to themselves, "You will never go to anyhow church again after watching this." Before you leave, take a moment. What would you do if you were Monique? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and turn on the notification bell. Because in Chapter 5, we'll see what happens after the exposure, when Monique faces the world's reaction and learns that truth also comes with a price. The rooster crowed somewhere behind a block of houses, but Monique didn't move. The pale Ibadan sunlight slipped through the torn curtain and landed on her face, warm yet heavy. Her phone buzzed softly on the table beside the bed. She turned away. She hadn't slept properly for days. Each time she closed her eyes, she saw the church burning in her mind. The fake miracles, the shouting crowd, the handcuffs clinking around Pastor Elisha's wrists. She had come to Ibadan thinking she could start again quietly. She rented a tiny one-room apartment at the back of a narrow street where goats wandered and children played football barefoot. Nobody here knew her name, or so she thought. She wanted peace. Just a small life again. But peace was a stranger now. The phone buzzed again. This time the vibration didn't stop. She sighed and reached for it. Over 20 new messages blinked on the screen. One group chat was titled Lagos Just Online. Another said Ibadan Women Prayer Forum. Her chest tightened. She opened one. A photo filled the screen. Her face, crying, captured from the viral video. The caption read, "Meet the woman who destroyed Fire of Heaven Ministry. She confessed to working for the devil." Monique froze. She scrolled further. Dozens of comments ran under the post. "She's jealous of the man of God. See her face, pure witch. Nah, people like this make good pastors suffer. But wait, oh, that church too fake Shah." Her hands shook so hard she almost dropped the phone. She opened Facebook. There again, her image, shared by pages she had never followed. One even used a clip of her kneeling in tears, labeling a confession of a Jezebel. Her throat tightened. She turned the phone face down and whispered, "Oh, God, what have I done?" Outside, the sound of hawkers calling pure water floated through the window. Life went on, ordinary and indifferent, but her world was collapsing. She rose slowly and walked to the small mirror nailed to the wall. Her reflection looked older, eyes swollen, lips dry, hair undone. She barely recognized herself. A soft knock broke the silence. "Who's there?" she asked, her voice trembling. "It's Mama Beezy," the landlady's wife answered. "Good morning, my sister." Monique forced a smile and opened the door halfway. "Good morning, Ma." Mama Beezy looked at her kindly, but her eyes held curiosity. "Ah, I just want to check on you. I saw something for Facebook this morning, and they say one woman exposed pastor for Lagos. The picture resembles you small. Monique's heart skipped. "People say too many things online," she murmured. Mama Beezy laughed uneasily. "Not true. You know Nigerians. Gossip no day rest." She hesitated. "But if not you, my sister, may God protect you. That kind courage no easy." Monique nodded weakly. "Thank you, Ma." When the woman left, Monique closed the door and leaned her forehead against it, shaking. She could feel it. Even here, miles away from Lagos, people were whispering her name. She sank to the floor, hugging her knees. For the first time, she realized how lonely she was. Marcus hadn't called since their last argument. Maybe he was ashamed of her too. She had exposed the church, but she had also lost her marriage, her friends, her peace. That afternoon, when she went to buy bread at the roadside kiosk, she felt the stares. Two women at the corner stopped talking when she walked by. One of them hissed softly, "She's the one." The other whispered, "See her face." The woman from the video. Monique's chest burned with shame. She turned quickly, walking faster, pretending not to hear. But the words followed her like shadows. By evening, she sat outside on the concrete step, watching children chase kites across the dusty sky. The world around her was laughing, living, breathing, but she felt like a ghost watching a life she no longer belonged to. Inside her room, the phone buzzed again. She ignored it at first, but the sound wouldn't stop. Finally, she picked it up. A new message blinked. From Monique Carter. "Monique, I heard everything. Please stay safe." She read it 3 times. That was all. "No, I'm sorry. No, I'll come." Just those 3 small words that felt like a wall. Concern without closeness. Her eyes filled with tears she had been holding back all day. She placed the phone on her lap and whispered, "You said stay safe. But how do I stay safe when even truth has turned against me?" The street lights flickered on. Somewhere far off, a muezzin's call echoed through the evening haze. Monique closed her eyes and prayed silently. But the only thing that came out was a broken whisper. "God, where are you?" The night wind answered with silence. The next morning was brighter, but to Monique the sunlight felt cruel. It poured through the window like judgment. She tried to distract herself by sweeping the tiny room, humming softly under her breath. But the rhythm of the broom only made her heart heavier. The radio from the neighbor's room played a talk show on a Ibadan morning voice. And today our hot gist, Fire of Heaven Ministry, that fake miracle church for Lagos. Ibadan scatter. One woman exposed the pastor. "Say not actor dem day used for healing." My people, can you imagine? The host laughed, his voice too loud, too cheerful. We even hear say the woman Don run go Ibadan. Some say she day hide. But the question be, was she fighting for God or fighting for fame? Monique froze. Her hands tightened on the broom handle. The laughter of the presenters bled into another round of mocking music. She turned off her own radio, but the voices from next door kept playing. When she stepped outside to fetch water, two teenage girls stared and whispered. One giggled and said loudly, "Ani fake pastor." They ran off laughing before she could speak. She stood there, holding the bucket, trembling. The water in the bucket rippled gently, reflecting her tear-stained face. Later that afternoon, she walked a small boutique where she had found a part-time job folding clothes. The owner, a soft-spoken woman named Ani Remy, met her at the door, twisting her hands nervously. "Monique, please come inside. We need to talk." Monique forced a smile. "Is everything all right?" Ani Remy looked away. "You're hard-working, I know, but customers have been asking questions. One woman even said she won't buy from us again because she saw your face on WhatsApp news." Monique felt her stomach sink. "So you want to leave?" "I don't want to," Ani Remy said softly. "But my husband said it's better for the shop's image. People are saying you fought a man of God. You know how this town is." For a moment, Monique couldn't speak. She just stared at the woman who had once hugged her every morning. Finally, she whispered, "I understand." Ani Remy reached out as if to touch her shoulder, but stopped halfway. "I'm sorry, my dear. The world can be wicked." Monique nodded and walked out slowly, her head bowed. The smell of new fabric and perfume lingered on her hands as she stepped into the street. The walk home felt endless. Ibadan Street stretched wide and noisy, filled with traders shouting, buses honking, people rushing about. She felt every eye on her. It was like the whole city knew her name. At the market, she tried to buy tomatoes. The seller, an older woman in a colorful wrapper, recognized her instantly. "Ah, I know this face. You be that woman Way disgraced pastor for Lagos." Monique froze. "Ma, please, Please what?" "People like you, na devil day Uzuna. You go church. You record man of God. Now see what happened. Dem don close at church. Many people don lose faith." The woman's voice rose higher, drawing a small crowd. Monique's lips trembled. "I didn't lie. Everything I said was true." "True? Who made you judge a God servant?" the woman shouted. "Go away from my stall before thunder strike." Laughter erupted from the bystanders. Monique dropped the basket and ran. Her chest ached as she pushed through the crowd, tears blurring her vision. By the time she reached her street, her knees were weak. She leaned against the wall and tried to catch her breath. Children stared at her from a distance, whispering and pointing. When she entered her room, she locked the door and slid to the floor. Her body shook as sobs poured out uncontrollably. "I told the truth," she cried. "So why does it feel like I'm a sinner?" Her phone buzzed again. This time it was a number she didn't recognize. She hesitated, then answered. A deep male voice said, "You think you've won, but you haven't. The man of God will rise again, and people like you will pay." The line went dead. Monique stared at the phone in horror. She turned it off and threw it into a drawer. Her heart thumped wildly. The shadows in the room seemed to move closer. She lay on the floor for a long time, staring at the ceiling. The hum of generators filled the night. Somewhere outside, a child was singing a church chorus, the same one they used to sing at Fire of Heaven Ministry. Miracle Worker, Promise Keeper. The sound sliced through her heart like glass. She covered her ears, whispering, "Stop, please stop." But the song only grew louder. Sunday morning came with restless silence. The entire neighborhood prepared for church. The smell of fried plantain and perfume drifted through the air. Children walked in neat lines, holding Bibles, their mothers in bright lace wrappers and gelly. From her window, Monique watched them go. Once upon a time, she would have been among them, smiling, full of faith, dressed in white. Now she couldn't even bear to hear church bells. But the noise surrounded her. Different churches on the street blasted loudspeakers. One preacher shouted, "Enemies of men of God will never see peace." Another cried, "Touch not my anointed." Each word hit her chest like a stone. She stayed on the bed, staring at the ceiling, until she couldn't breathe. Finally, she decided to go outside. Maybe a walk would quiet her mind. The air was hot and dusty. She walked slowly down the road, wrapping her shawl tightly around her head. At the junction, a crowd had gathered around a small, open-air church. The preacher stood on a wooden platform, holding a microphone connected to a loudspeaker. "Listen, my people," he shouted. "In these last days, Jezebels are rising. They call themselves truth-tellers, but they are destroyers of the gospel. They record pastors. They lie on holy men. They make people mock the house of God." The crowd murmured. The preacher lifted a newspaper. "Look at this. The woman from Lagos. She said she exposed fake miracles. But who sent her? Who gave her power to fight a man of God? My people, if she can bring down a prophet, what will she do to your faith?" Monique's legs turned to stone. The preacher was talking about her. Her photo was printed on the newspaper he waved. "She has cursed herself," the preacher cried, "until she repents. Her life will never have peace." People shouted, "Amen," and clapped. Monique tried to turn away, but someone saw her. A man at the edge of the crowd pointed. "Ah, is that not the same woman?" The preacher stopped mid-sentence. All eyes turned toward her. Whispers spread quickly. "It's her. Jesus. Nashio." Monique's throat went dry. She wanted to walk away quietly, but the crowd closed in. Some held their phones up, recording. "Why did you do it?" a woman shouted. "Why did you disgrace the Church of God?" "I didn't," Monique began, her voice shaking. "I told the truth. He was lying to people." "Liar," another man shouted. "You can't fight God." A few people threw sachet water at her. One packet hit her shoulder, bursting cold water down her arm. Another grazed her cheek. Laughter followed. Monique covered her face and tried to move, but the shouting grew louder. "Repent. Confess. Devil woman." Her knees weakened. She sank to the ground, crying openly. "I didn't do wrong," she whispered. "I only told the truth." The preacher's voice thundered again. "See what happens when people touch God anointed. Her shame will be her punishment." The crowd shouted hallelujah. Monique lifted her face, tears mixing with dust. "If telling the truth brings shame, then maybe shame is holy," she said weakly. But no one listened. She stood up slowly, trembling. Her shawl slipped from her head, revealing her tired eyes and uncombed hair. People stared as if she were a ghost. She began to walk away, her legs barely carrying her. Behind her, the preacher kept shouting, "Let this be a warning to all. God cannot be mocked." She walked until the voices faded into the wind. When she reached the empty road, she stopped beside a drainage ditch and fell to her knees again. The world around her blurred. Cars passed, horns blaring, but she couldn't hear them. She pressed her palms against the rough ground, crying so hard her chest hurt. Everything inside her felt torn. Faith, hope, pride. She whispered through her sobs, "Why, God? Why does truth bring pain? Why did you leave me alone?" The evening sun dipped low, casting long shadows over her. Dust clung to her skin, mixing with her tears. She looked like a woman who had lost not just her strength, but her purpose. When she finally rose, she walked home in silence. The world felt far away, like a movie she no longer belonged to. In her room, she didn't turn on the light. She sat on the floor, hugging her knees, the darkness pressing around her like a blanket. Her phone blinked on the table, showing dozens of missed calls, journalists, bloggers, unknown numbers. She didn't touch it. For hours, she stared into nothing. Then, softly, she began to hum a tune she hadn't sung in years, her mother's lullaby. Her voice broke halfway through. The song died in her throat, replaced by sobs. The night wind blew through the cracks in the window, whispering like ghosts. Outside, a dog barked. Somewhere far away, church bells rang again, but this time she didn't even flinch. She just sat there, hollow and trembling, until tears ran dry. When morning finally came, she hadn't slept. Her eyes were swollen, her lips cracked. She stood up slowly and faced a small mirror. "I told the truth," she said to her reflection, her voice barely a whisper. "So, why do I feel cursed?" The woman in the mirror didn't answer. Monique touched the glass gently, as if trying to comfort herself, but her hand only met the cold surface. Then, finally, she whispered, "Maybe I should have just kept quiet." She sank to the bed again, covering her face as tears began to fall once more. And for the first time since the scandal began, she wished she had never spoken at all. Broken heart, if your heart broke for her, drop a tear emoji in the comments. The morning light came slowly, slipping between the faded curtains and spreading across the small room like mercy itself. Monique hadn't slept. Her body was still weak, her eyes sore from crying through the night. Every breath felt heavy, but there was a small difference in the silence that morning. It wasn't cruel. It was calm. A soft knock came at the door. Not urgent, not loud, just gentle. She sat up slowly, wiping her face. "Who is it?" she asked, her voice dry. "It's Mama Beezy," the landlady's wife said, the same woman who had once asked if the stories online were true. "My daughter, you never come out since yesterday. I say make I check on you." Monique hesitated, then rose and opened the door halfway. The morning air smelled of pap and fried akra from a roadside stall. Mama Beezy held a small tray. On it was a bowl of warm pap, some bread, and a cup of water. "Take," she said softly. "You look weak. Eat something, please." Monique blinked, surprised. "You didn't have to." "I know," the woman said, smiling faintly. "But sometimes we do things not because we have to, but because it's right. Eat small. You need strength." Monique's throat tightened. "Thank you, Ma." The woman looked at her kindly. "People talk too much in this world. Yesterday they talk about you. Tomorrow they go talk about another person. Don't let their words kill your spirit." Monique nodded, but her voice trembled. "They call me Jezebel. They say I destroyed the house of God." Mama Beezy sighed deeply. "My sister, truth they always offend those way benefit from lies. But God knows your heart." Those words sank into Monique like warm water easing a wound. For the first time in days, she felt seen, not judged, not mocked, just understood. After Mama Beezy left, Monique sat quietly and ate. The pap was plain and sweet, like something from her childhood. Each sip warmed her empty stomach and loosened the tightness in her chest. She hadn't realized how hungry she'd been, not just for food, but for kindness. Outside, Ibadan moved at its own gentle pace. Children carried buckets to fetch water. Women laughed as they prepared breakfast, and a man pushed a wheelbarrow full of oranges down the dusty road shouting, "Sweet orange, 100 naira." Monique watched through the window. For weeks, she had felt invisible, but now, for a moment, she felt part of life again. She cleaned her room slowly that morning, folded her clothes, opened the window wider. As sunlight filled the room, she took a deep breath and whispered, "Maybe I'm still alive for a reason." Her phone, lying forgotten on the table, buzzed softly. A message appeared from an unknown number. "You don't know me, but thank you. My sister was also in that church. You helped her see the truth. God bless you." Monique's hands shook as she read it. The sender hadn't signed their name, but the words glowed on the screen like light breaking through clouds. She whispered, "Thank you, Lord," though her voice cracked. It was the first prayer she had said in days. She didn't feel healed yet, not forgiven, not strong. But for the first time, she didn't feel entirely broken either. Outside, a soft breeze blew through the window, carrying the distant sound of children singing from a nearby school. "This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine." Monique closed her eyes and let the song wash over her. The tears came again, but this time they weren't bitter. They were gentle, quiet, cleansing. The next morning, the sky above Ibadan was a soft blue, the kind that came after rain, washed clean and kind. Monique stood by the window, watching the neighborhood wake up. It was market day, and voices drifted through the air, laughter, bargaining, footsteps on dusty ground. For the first time in weeks, she wanted to step outside. She wrapped her scarf loosely around her head, slipped into a plain brown gown, and picked up her old purse. The mirror caught a reflection, pale but calm. "You're still here," she whispered to herself, and opened the door. The air smelled of roasted corn and wet earth. As she walked through the narrow path, some people stared. Others didn't notice her at all. A small boy ran past, chasing a plastic bottle. He had turned into a toy car. He bumped into her leg, looked up quickly, and said, "Sorry, Auntie." Monique smiled faintly and patted his head. "It's okay." It was a small thing, but it made her chest feel warm. At the market, women shouted prices, holding up tomatoes, onions, and peppers. It was noisy and full of life. Monique moved slowly between the stalls, feeling the pulse of the city again. A woman selling bananas caught her eye. "Sister, come buy sweet banana," she called. Then her face softened as she looked closer. "Ah, are you the woman from that Lego story?" Monique's heart stopped. She lowered her eyes. "Yes," she whispered. "That's me." The woman didn't shout. She didn't judge. Instead, she sighed and said quietly, "My husband lost money to that same church. You did a brave thing. May God heal you." Monique's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you." The woman smiled gently. Sometimes truth comes with tears first before peace. "Take one banana free, for courage." Monique wanted to refuse, but the woman placed it firmly in her hand. "God sees you," she said. For a long moment, Monique couldn't speak. She walked away slowly, the banana still in her hand, her heart swelling with gratitude and pain all at once. When she reached the end of the street, she saw an old man sitting under a mango tree. His clothes were worn, and beside him was a small sign that read, "Prayer and counsel, pay what you can." He wasn't like the flashy pastors she'd known. His Bible was old and falling apart. His chair was just a wooden stool. Something about his calm drew her closer. "Good morning, sir," she said softly. The man smiled. "Good morning, my daughter. You look like someone carrying a long story." Monique hesitated, then sat on the low bench beside him. "I've been through too much, sir. I thought I was doing God's work, but it cost me everything. My name, my peace, my home." The man listened quietly. When she finished, he said gently, "Sometimes God allows us to lose everything noisy so we can hear him in silence." She looked up slowly. "But I feel empty." He nodded. "Empty is not always bad. Empty is how he fills you again." The words were simple, but they sank deep into her. She sat there for a long time, listening to the sound of the leaves rustling and distant traffic humming. The old man prayed softly for her, just a few sentences, no shouting, no performance. "Father, give her peace where there was fear, truth where there was confusion, and joy where there was shame." When he finished, Monique whispered, "Amen." As she stood to leave, he said, "Remember, daughter, even after fire burns the ground, something green still grows." She walked back home quietly, repeating the words in her mind. Something green still grows. Back in her room, she placed the banana on the table and smiled faintly. Then she picked up her small Bible, the one she hadn't opened since everything fell apart. The pages were worn and stained, but familiar. She opened randomly, and her eyes landed on a verse. "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." Her hands trembled. She whispered again and again until her voice became a prayer. Outside, the afternoon sun shone brighter, painting golden light on her wall. For the first time in a long while, she whispered, "Maybe I'm not cursed after all." The following week passed slowly, each day softer than the one before. Ibadan's rhythm began to feel familiar again. The noise of the streets, the smell of ripe mangoes, the laughter of children, they all became small pieces of healing that wrapped around Monique's broken heart like quiet medicine. She spent her mornings sweeping the yard, humming faintly under her breath. Sometimes she would walk to the mango tree where the old man sat and greet him, but mostly she kept to herself. She didn't have much, yet she had started to breathe again without pain. One afternoon, as the sun began to fall low and golden, She saw a young woman sitting by the roadside not far from her compound. The girl couldn't have been more than 20. Dressed in faded jeans and a torn blouse, her face streaked with tears. Beside her was a small bag of clothes. Something in Monique's chest pulled her closer. "My dear, you all right?" she asked gently. The girl looked up, startled. "Auntie, I don't know where to go. They chased me from my auntie's house because I refused to follow her to one church. She said I'm possessed." Monique's breath caught. "Which church?" "Fire of Heaven Branch," the girl whispered. The name still stung, but Monique knelt beside her. "What's your name?" "Amara," the girl said softly. "Amara," Monique repeated, smiling faintly. "That means grace." The girl nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. Monique sat beside her on the dusty roadside. "You did nothing wrong," she said. "Sometimes saying no is how God protects us." The girl sniffed. "But where will I sleep tonight?" Monique looked at her small room across the street. It wasn't much, one mattress, one chair, one small stove. But it was warm and safe. "You can stay with me," she said quietly. "Just for tonight." The girl's eyes widened. "Really?" Monique nodded. "Yes. Come." They walked together through the narrow path. The evening wind carried the smell of stew from nearby houses. In her room, Monique shared her leftover food and a spare wrapper. The girl ate silently, then whispered, "Thank you, Auntie. I didn't think anyone would help me." Monique smiled. "I know how that feels." When Amara lay down to sleep, Monique sat by the window, watching the stars appear one by one. The city had grown quiet, and somewhere far away, she could hear the soft beat of drums from a church night vigil. But it no longer made her flinch. She whispered to herself, "Maybe God sent her to remind me who I was." For a long time, she sat there in silence, the breeze lifting the edge of her wrapper, her heart light for the first time in months. When she finally turned to lie down, she saw Amara asleep, her face calm. Monique smiled faintly. Something inside her felt alive again, not the fire of shouting faith, but a small, steady warmth. The next morning, the first rays of sunlight touched her face. She opened her eyes slowly, feeling peace instead of pain. Amara was still sleeping, curled up gently like a child. Monique got up quietly and made pap on her little stove. The smell filled the room. As she stirred, she began to hum again, the same song she had once heard the children sing outside. "This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine." Her voice trembled at first, but grew steadier with each word. She poured the pap into 2 bowls and whispered, "Yes, Lord, maybe my light can still shine." For the first time since her world fell apart, she smiled, not because her problems were gone, but because her heart had learned to breathe again. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but she knew one thing for sure. She was no longer broken beyond repair. The morning breeze drifted through the open window, and Monique whispered, "Thank you." And somewhere deep in her spirit, it felt like God whispered back, "Welcome home." If you ever felt lost but found a little light again, drop a yellow heart in the comments. It had been nearly 2 months since the morning Monique let Amara into her small room. Life in Ibadan had settled into a rhythm again, quiet, ordinary, gentle. She woke before sunrise, prayed softly, cooked simple meals, and sometimes sat on the mango tree of the old man who had once told her that something green still grows after fire. One afternoon, she was washing clothes in a basin when a knock came. She wiped her hands on her wrapper and opened the door to see a round-faced woman in a bright orange head tie smiling at her. "Good afternoon, my dear. My name is Auntie Lola from Ibadan Community Voice FM." Monique blinked. "FM radio?" "Yes, Ma. I host a program called Women Speak. We talk about strength, faith, and what women survive in this life. Someone gave me your name. She said you once spoke against a fake church in Lagos." Monique's stomach turned. "That story again?" Auntie Lola nodded slowly. "Yes, but not to shame you. I want people to hear the truth in your own words, not the noise that social media made of you. If you'll come to the studio tomorrow, just 30 minutes. No pressure." Monique hesitated. The thought of speaking publicly again made her chest tighten. People still hate me. They call me names. The older woman's eyes softened. And still you're standing. That's what we want to talk about. How a woman keeps standing. She left her a card printed with faded blue ink and a phone number. Think about it, my dear. That night Monique couldn't sleep. The little radio by her bed hummed quietly, playing gospel songs. She stared at the ceiling, torn between fear and a strange pull in her heart. Lord, she whispered, I don't want to go back into the fire, but if you want me to speak, give me courage. Morning came with soft rain tapping on the window. She picked up the card again. The number blurred in her shaking hands. Before she could change her mind, she dialed, Hello. Auntie Lola's warm voice came through the line. I'll come. Monique said, Bless you, my dear, the woman replied. Just tell your story the way you lived it. Nothing fancy. Truth alone carries power. The next day, Monique wore a plain navy dress and tied her scarf neatly. The studio sat above a small bakery. The smell of fresh bread drifted through the air. She climbed the narrow stairs, her heart beating fast. Inside, the room was cool, filled with soft lights and microphones wrapped in blue foam. Auntie Lola smiled from behind the console. You're safe here, she said, guiding Monique to a seat. When the red on-air light blinked, Monique's hands trembled. Good afternoon, my listeners. Auntie Lola began gently. Today we have a special woman, someone who faced public shame for telling the truth. Her name is Monique Carter. Some of you remember her story. But today, I ask that you listen with your hearts, not with gossip. Monique swallowed hard. For a moment, words refused to come. Then she said softly, I never planned to fight anyone. I only wanted to see God clearly. But what I saw broke me. Her voice cracked, but she kept going, about the false miracles, the fear, the loneliness, the betrayal. She spoke in simple sentences, not to accuse, but to confess the pain of being human. I thought telling the truth would make people clap for me, she said. Instead, it made them throw stones. But if one woman hears this and learns to trust her heart again, then my shame was not useless. When she finished, the studio was quiet. Even Auntie Lola's eyes were wet. She reached across the table and squeezed Monique's hand. You just set many hearts free, she whispered. Monique smiled through her tears. For the first time, speaking didn't feel like fire. It felt like release. Outside the window, rain began to fall again, soft and cleansing. The rain had stopped by the time Monique left the radio station. The streets glistened under the weak afternoon sun, and puddles reflected the faces of passing strangers. She walked slowly, her sandals splashing softly in the water. Something inside her felt lighter, like a stone had been lifted from her chest. When she reached home, the little radio on her table was still tuned to Ibadan Community Voice FM. The replay of her interview had begun. She froze, listening to her own voice echo through the small room. If one woman hears this and learns to trust her heart again, then my shame was not useless. Hearing herself say those words made her eyes fill with tears. But they weren't the bitter kind anymore. They were warm, cleansing. Her phone began to buzz. At first, she ignored it, but it wouldn't stop. She picked it up and saw messages flooding in, some from unknown numbers, some from old friends she thought she had lost forever. I listened to you on the radio, and I cried. I was once in a church like that. Thank you for speaking. I used to mock you online, but now I understand. Please forgive me. My sister died after following a fake prophet. Hearing you talk healed something in me. Monique pressed her hand against her mouth, overwhelmed. She scrolled through dozens of messages, her heart racing. For every hateful comment she had once seen, there were now words of love, gratitude, and hope. That evening, as the sky dimmed, someone knocked on her door. She hesitated, then opened it slowly. A young woman stood outside, clutching her handbag tightly. She looked nervous, eyes swollen as if she'd been crying. Are you Monique Carter? She asked softly. Yes, I am. The woman nodded quickly. I heard you on the radio today. I've been in a church that sounds just like the one you described. I don't know what to believe anymore. Monique stepped aside. Come in, my dear. The woman entered, looking around the small room with its simple furniture and open Bible on the table. She sat down slowly. They told me I'd die if I left. But when I heard your story, I felt like maybe God isn't angry with me. Monique smiled gently. He isn't. He never was. You just met people who use his name wrong. The woman burst into tears. Monique moved closer, wrapping her arms around her. You're safe here, she whispered. You're not alone. They talked long into the evening, their voices low and honest. When the woman finally left, she was smiling through her tears. In the days that followed, more women began to appear. First one, then two, then four. Some brought gifts of food or candles. Others brought nothing but stories and tears. Monique listened to each of them, her heart breaking and healing at the same time. She never called it a ministry, never printed flyers, never asked for money. But word spread quietly. There was a woman in Ibadan who understood, who didn't judge, who could pray with you without shouting. One Saturday afternoon, her tiny room was filled with women sitting on mats, holding hands. Some prayed softly. Others just wept. The old man from the mango tree came too, sitting quietly in a corner, nodding as they spoke. Monique looked around to faces, young, old, rich, poor, and felt a strange peace settle over her. God, she whispered to herself, you turned my pain into a place for others to rest. When the women finished praying, one of them asked, Auntie Monique, are you happy again? She smiled faintly. I don't know if happy is the word, but I'm whole, and that's enough. That night, she sat by the window again, the sound of night crickets filling the air. The stars above Ibadan shimmered like distant candles. She held her Bible and whispered, maybe this was why you let it all happen, so I could help him find peace too. For a long time, she sat in silence, her heart full of quiet gratitude. And for the first time in her life, Monique felt no fear, no anger, no shame. Just peace. Blossom if you've ever turned your pain into purpose. Leave a sparkling heart in the comments and tell someone your light still shines. The Lagos evening traffic was thick and restless, the kind that stretched every driver's patience. Monique Carter gripped the steering wheel of his old Toyota Camry, inching forward in the slow crawl of horns and shouts. He had left work late again, his tie loose and his mind far away. The radio played softly news, gossip, songs, background noise he barely noticed, until he heard a voice. I never planned to fight anyone. I only wanted to see God clearly. But what I saw broke me. Marcus froze. That voice, it couldn't be. He turned up the volume. The host's calm tone followed. You're very brave, Miss Carter. Speaking up cost you so much. It did, the woman replied, her voice trembling gently. But if one woman hears this and learns to trust her heart again, then my shame was not useless. Marcus's hands went cold. It was Monique. He pulled the car over, ignoring the angry horns behind him. For a long time, he sat there listening. Her voice was softer than he remembered, but stronger somehow. There was no bitterness, no anger, just truth. When the program ended, the radio host said, that was Monique Carter, a woman who faced shame and found grace again. Marcus leaned back in his seat, eyes closed. A single tear escaped down his cheek. He whispered, Monique. For months he had tried not to think about her. The fights, the distance, the pain. He had buried himself in work, convincing himself it was for the best. But hearing her now reopened everything. He started the engine and turned the car around. By the next morning, he was on the road to Ibadan. The long highway stretched ahead, flanked by dusty trees and villages with red roofs. As he drove, memories flooded his mind. Her laughter in the kitchen, her soft humming while folding clothes, her voice praying for him when things were hard. He realized he missed not just her, but the part of himself that only existed when she was near. When he reached Ibadan, the city greeted him with its familiar hills and wide roads. He didn't have her address, but he remembered a small bakery she once mentioned near her new home. He parked and asked around. A kind vendor pointed toward a narrow street. Yes, there's a woman like that. Quiet, always helping people. You'll find her there. His heart pounded as he walked down the dusty lane. Children ran past, laughing. Somewhere, a radio played softly, the same interview replaying again. Then he saw her. Monique was sitting outside her small house, peeling oranges for the neighborhood children. Her hair was tied back, her wrapper simple, her smile faint but peaceful. She looked nothing like the woman he remembered, yet somehow even more beautiful. He stopped a few feet away, his throat too tight to speak. She looked up and froze. The orange dropped from her hand. "Marcus," she whispered. He took a step closer. "Monique." For a moment, neither of them moved. The world around them seemed a blur. The sound of children playing, the passing cars, the wind. Everything disappeared. Then he said softly, "I heard you on the radio." Her eyes filled with tears. "You did." He nodded. "I listened to every word. I'm sorry, Monique. I didn't stand by you when you needed me. I let my pride speak louder than my heart." She looked away, blinking hard. "You thought I was crazy." "I was afraid," he admitted. "Afraid of what people would say. Afraid of losing peace. But I didn't realize I was losing you." The silence that followed was heavy but tender. Monique's hands trembled. "I never wanted to destroy our home, Marcus. I was just trying to do what I thought was right." "I know that now," he said quietly. "And I'm proud of you. You told the truth when everyone else stayed silent." Tears rolled down her cheeks. He stepped closer, slowly, like approaching something fragile. "Can you forgive me?" She nodded weakly. "Only if you forgive me, too." He reached out, his hand hovering for a moment before she let him hold hers. Their fingers fit together like a memory returning home. Neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. The wind blew softly between them, carrying the scent of oranges and dust. After a long silence, Marcus smiled faintly. "I didn't come here to take you away. I just want to see if you were okay." She looked at him through her tears. "I'm learning to be." Slowly. He nodded. "Then maybe I can learn with you." She didn't answer, but the corner of her lips curved upward. The first true smile he'd seen in years. As the sun dipped behind the Ibadan hills, they sat side by side on a small concrete step outside her room, their hands still clasped, the silence between them finally peaceful. Above them, the evening sky turned gold, and the city lights flickered on one by one. Small lights, quiet but steady, just like the two of them. Dizzy if you believe forgiveness can rebuild even the hardest hearts. Leave a red heart in the comments. The morning they left Ibadan, the sky was pale gold. Birds moved across it like quiet promises. Monique stood outside the small room that had sheltered her pain and whispered a soft goodbye. The window still held her old Bible on the sill. The air smelled of the mango tree nearby. Marcus packed their few bags into the back seat of his car. When he closed the door, he looked at her and smiled. "Ready?" She hesitated, glancing around one last time. "I found peace here," she said softly. He nodded. "Then let's carry it with us." The road back to Lagos was long, lined with red soil and laughter from roadside sellers. They spoke little. Sometimes Marcus reached over and squeezed her hand. Once he turned on the radio, and by chance a familiar voice came through. Auntie Lola replaying the same interview that had reunited them. They both listened in silence. When it ended, Monique smiled faintly. "It still feels like someone else's story." Marcus shook his head. "It's ours, and it's not over yet." By late afternoon, the skyline of Lagos rose ahead, busy, loud, unashamed. Buses honked. People shouted prices. Life moved fast again. Monique's chest tightened. Memories flooded back. The noise of Fire of Heaven ministry, the crowds, the humiliation. Marcus parked near a quiet street in Surulere. "This is the place I told you about," he said. It was a modest building once used as an event hall, its paint peeling, but the windows wide and open to light. "They're letting us use it for free until we can pay rent." Monique stepped inside slowly. Dust floated in the sunbeams. The air smelled of old wood and faint perfume. "It feels empty," she said. Marcus smiled. "Empty is how he fills you again, remember?" Her lips curved into a small smile. "Yes." They spent the next few days cleaning. Marcus fixed broken chairs. Monique swept and washed the windows. Neighbors watched curiously. Some recognized her and whispered, but no one confronted her. On the 5th day, she placed a handwritten sign outside the door. Healing Circle. For anyone hurt by false prophets or broken faith. No money, just truth. At first, only 2 women came. One was a mother who had sold her car for miracle seeds. The other was a man whose sister had died after refusing hospital treatment. They sat quietly while Monique spoke. She didn't preach. She told her story, softly, humbly. Marcus sat beside her, nodding, adding gentle words now and then. When they finished, the small group prayed in silence. No shouting, no drums, just breathing and tears. The next week, 4 more people came. Then 8, then 12. They brought friends, neighbors, co-workers. Some sat on the floor when chairs ran out. Someone donated a fan. Another brought bottles of water. One evening, as the group ended, a woman approached Monique with trembling hands. "They laughed at you before," she said, "but now you're the reason we're standing." Monique smiled, tears glistening. "It wasn't me," she said. "It was truth finding its way home." That night, as they locked up, Marcus turned to her. "Do you realize what you've done? You turned the same city that broke you into your beginning." She looked at the quiet street outside, the Lagos lights glowing softly. Maybe healing others was how God planned to heal me. They stood for a moment, listening to distant church bells and car horns blending into the hum of the city. Monique reached for his hand. "Thank you for coming back," she whispered. Marcus smiled. "I never really left. I just got lost." She leaned her head on his shoulder as the night breeze swept through the doorway. The sun that morning shone brighter than usual, as if Lagos itself was preparing for something new. Monique stood before the wide doorway of the old event hall, her palms sweaty despite the morning breeze. A small banner hung above the entrance, hand-painted in blue letters by a neighbor's son. Healing Circle, stories of truth and faith. Inside, the rows of chairs were mismatched. The fans rattled when turned on, and the air smelled faintly of detergent and dust. But to Monique, it felt like a holy place. Marcus walked up beside her, carrying a box of bottled water. "The microphone works," he said with a half-smile. "Though it hums a little." She laughed softly. "That's fine. Maybe a little hum will make us sound like angels." He chuckled, shaking his head. "You're nervous?" She nodded. "Very." He squeezed her shoulder gently. "Then just speak the way you did on the radio. Speak with truth." By noon, people began to arrive, some curious, some shy, some clearly broken. There were market women in colorful wrappers, students clutching notebooks, an old taxi driver, even a young couple holding hands like they were afraid to let go. When the small hall filled, Monique stood up front, holding the microphone. The sound squealed for a moment, then quieted. She looked at the crowd, nearly 50 faces watching, waiting. "Good afternoon," she began. Her voice trembled, then steadied. "Many of you already know my story. You may have heard it in whispers or on the radio. But what matters now is not where I fell, but what God did after fall." She paused. The hall was silent. "I was called names," she continued. "Jezebel, witch destroyer. I believed those words for a long time. But the truth is, God never stopped loving me. He never stops loving any of us." A murmur of amen spread through the room. She smiled faintly. "This isn't a church. There's no offering basket here. You don't have to clap or shout. We're just here to breathe together, to remember that faith should never be fear." Her voice grew stronger. "If you were deceived, you're not foolish. If you were hurt, you're not cursed. You are human, and you can heal." Tears began to roll down a woman's cheeks in the second row. A man in the corner bowed his head, his shoulders shaking. Monique's own throat tightened, but she pressed on. "I lost everything, friends, reputation, even my marriage for a time. But God brought me back to life, not through power, but through peace." She turned slightly toward Marcus, whose eyes glistened, "and through forgiveness." The crowd followed her gaze. A few clapped softly. After the session, people lined up to speak with her. Some wanted prayers, others just hugs. One woman whispered, "My daughter stopped going to church after being scammed by a prophet. Today, she's smiling again." Monique held her and whispered, "Keep smiling. That's your miracle." Outside, the street filled with chatter. Someone offered to donate chairs. Another said they'd print flyers for the next meeting. It was no longer just an idea. It was growing into a movement. As the last guest left, Marcus locked the doors and turned to her. "You did it," he said quietly. She shook her head. "No, we did." They stepped out into the Lagos evening. The sky painted orange and gold. Traffic hummed in the distance. But this street felt different, calm, like a sanctuary. Monique stopped and looked back at the little building. "Do you remember when everyone turned their back on me?" she asked. Marcus nodded slowly. She smiled, her voice soft. "Now they're walking toward us." He looked at her with quiet pride. "And they'll keep coming, because the world needs people who tell the truth." They walked hand in hand toward the car, the fading sun wrapping them in warm light. For the first time since her nightmare began, Monique felt not just peace, but purpose. She turned to Marcus and said, "Maybe this is what it means to be called." He smiled, not to destroy, but to rebuild. They both laughed gently as the city lights blinked awake around them, and Monique whispered, "Amen." By the time the Harmattan winds returned, Lagos had learned Monique Carter's name again. Not as a woman who destroyed a church, but as the woman who rebuilt faith. Billboards didn't carry her face, but whispers did. People spoke of that woman in Surreal who prays without shouting. Taxi drivers mentioned her meetings. Market women quoted her quiet words. Every weekend, the small event hall overflowed. Marcus added benches outside, and people still stood by the windows listening. Some came from as far as Ibadan and Abeokuta. Others simply walked in from the street, drawn by curiosity that turned into peace. On a bright Sunday, Monique stepped to the front of the packed hall. The fans hummed loudly, but her voice was clear. "We started with 4 people," she said, smiling, "and today I see faces from every corner of the city. You didn't come for me. You came for truth, and that means Lagos still has hope." The crowd clapped softly, reverently. Marcus watched her from the side, pride glistening in his eyes. He had become the quiet strength behind the work, handling calls, arranging chairs, calming visitors when the room was too full. Sometimes, when she spoke, he forgot she was his wife. She sounded larger than the pain she once carried. After the meeting, an elderly woman approached with a young man leaning on crutches. "My son lost his leg after a fake pastor told him not to go for surgery," she said. "He blamed God, but after hearing you on the radio, he started to believe again." The young man smiled shyly. "Auntie Monique, thank you for giving me back my faith." Monique's eyes filled with tears. She placed her hand gently on his shoulder. "You gave it back to yourself, my dear. All I did was remind you where to look." Outside, cameras flashed. Local journalists had come, eager to cover the silent revival spreading through the city. One reporter asked, "Madame Monique, people call you the woman who healed Lagos. How does that make you feel?" She laughed softly. "I didn't heal anyone. Truth did. God just used my brokenness as a bridge." When the story aired that evening, calls poured in from across the country. Churches invited her to speak. NGOs offered support, and strangers sent donations she never asked for. But she and Marcus agreed to keep it simple. No big banners, no politics, no profit. "We'll grow slow," Marcus said one night as they walked along the Third Mainland Bridge, the city lights glittering across a lagoon. "We'll let the truth grow like roots, not like fireworks." Monique nodded, smiling into the cool wind. Roots last longer. In the months that followed, they opened 2 new branches, one in Acacia, another in Yaba. Not churches, but community centers where people gathered to talk, learn, and pray quietly. Women shared food, men shared stories, and laughter began to replace fear. One afternoon, Monique stood outside the Yaba Center, watching a group of children paint a wall. They were writing a verse she had once whispered through tears in Ibadan. "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted." She felt Marcus come up behind her. "Remember the night you asked where God was?" he said softly. She turned and smiled. Yes. He pointed at the children. He was waiting for this. Monique looked at the bright blue letters dry in the sun and whispered. Then he waited well. They laughed together, light and free. That evening, when the final visitors left, Monique and Marcus stayed behind, sitting at the entrance as the sun set over Lagos. The city buzzed around them, horns, laughter, life, but inside their hearts, there was only stillness. Marcus reached for her hand. You turned our pain into purpose. She shook her head. We did it together. You gave me the courage to speak again. He smiled, and you gave me back my faith. They sat in silence, watching the golden light fade into night. Glowing star of the story touched your heart and reminded you that truth can heal. Drop a red heart and share it with someone who needs hope today. Night fell softly over Lagos. The streets glowed with streetlights and the faint glimmer of shop signs. From their new home above the community hall, Monique could see the crowd thinning out below, women laughing as they packed chairs, children chasing one another through the open courtyard, Marcus waving goodnight to an elderly man. She stood by the balcony, her hands resting on the rail, her eyes shining with quiet gratitude. The city that once humiliated her now hummed with peace. Marcus joined her, wiping his hands on a towel. You should rest, he said. You've done enough for today. She smiled softly. When I remember how I once begged God just to survive the day, I realize this. Helping others is my rest. They stood together, looking out over Lagos. The wind carried faint echoes of gospel songs from distant churches. But here, everything felt calm. Do you remember that night you first found me in Ibadan? She asked quietly. Marcus nodded. How could I forget? I thought I was finished, she said. But that night, when you held my hand, something inside me said, You're not done yet. He looked at her with warmth. You weren't done. You were just being planted. Monique laughed softly. Planted? Seeds don't die when buried, he said. They grow. Her smile deepened, eyes glistening. Then we've both grown, haven't we? Marcus nodded. More than we could imagine. A gentle knock came on the door. When Marcus opened it, Auntie Lola, the radio host who had first believed in Monique, stood there with a familiar bright orange head tie and a warm grin. My children, she exclaimed, stepping in. I couldn't sleep without seeing with my eyes what God has done through you. Monique laughed and hugged her tightly. Auntie Lola, you started this, you know. The woman smiled. I only gave you a microphone. You gave the world a reason to listen. They all sat together for tea, talking and laughing until late. As she prepared to leave, Auntie Lola turned to Monique and said, You reminded us that truth doesn't shout. It whispers and still moves mountains. After she left, Monique stood by the window again. The city lights twinkled like stars falling to the earth. Marcus slipped his arm around her shoulders. So what now? He asked. She thought for a moment. We keep going, quietly, helping, loving, forgiving, until truth becomes louder than lies. He nodded. That sounds like forever. She smiled. Then let forever begin. They turned toward each other and embraced as the night deepened, their hearts steady, their story complete. Outside, Lagos was alive, restless, loud, but still full of hope. Somewhere in the distance, a woman tuned her radio and heard Monique's voice replayed once again, soft but powerful, saying, Faith should heal, not harm. Truth should lift, not shame. And love should never be silent. The woman smiled, wiped her tears, and whispered, Amen. And just like that, Monique's story, born from pain, continued to light countless hearts across the city.